a big task on our hands in the next 2 months, don't we? And beyond. Who's suited up for it? Stand up. You suited up for it. Who else is suited up for it? Stand up. You suited up for it. Who else? You suited up for it. Who else? Who suited up for it? Who else? Okay, all right. The rest of you, be ashamed. Be very ashamed. No, I understand that it's time for the speeches. And I am here for one reason. I told Tony Perkins that what is important to me is to let the most important voting bloc in the United States get a message. Do you know who that voting bloc is? It is believers in Jesus Christ. The believing community across the United States statistically will be the voting bloc that chooses who the next president of the United States is. Do you realize that? Do you realize the level of power and influence that a mighty God has laid into the hands of those who call on his name? We have a powerful opportunity. And one thing that we need to keep in mind is a sense of urgency. People have gone through this whole long process. Don't you wish elections were like 6 weeks long? I do. This has kind of gone out. 3.5 years is kind of a long time. But what we recognize is that this year in 2016 really is like no other year we have had before, because we have never seen the level of American decline in the way that we have for the last 7.5 years. Who agrees with me? Okay, good. But who agrees with me that in all likelihood, the United States of America may not survive another 8-year dilemma of tailspin American decline? That's how serious it is. Because you see, I believe this. If there will be 2 candidates this fall, every 4 years there's always a third-party candidate or fourth-party candidate that comes into play in these elections. But if you look at American history, it always comes down to 2, count them, 1, 2 candidates. And it's going to be one of the 1, 2 candidates. This year is no different. It will either be Donald Trump or it will be Hillary Clinton, one of the 2. And just like the book of Deuteronomy teaches us, that I have set before you life and death, which will you choose? What is so odd is that throughout history, you can begin in Genesis. You don't even have to go beyond chapters 3 and 4 to see that mankind is given a choice, life and death. And what did mankind choose? Mankind chose the way that was rebellion against a holy God. And so the entire rest of Scripture is a scarlet thread of redemption, of a loving God, a creator God who says to his creation, I love you so much, I want you back. I will be willing to come in the form and likeness of you and give my life to pay for your sin so that you can come back to me. That's the story of Scripture. We always have the chance to come back to a holy God, into his fold, life and death. What do we choose? America's made a lot of choices in recent years that aren't necessarily reflective of his word. Those choices have brought about sorrow and sadness, because that's what sin does. It creates sadness. And we've seen sadness in our midst and sadness in our land. And it's entirely preventable, because we've been given an owner's manual in the form of the Old Testament, the Tanakh, and the New Testament to, again, make the way where there is no way and bridge that unbridgeable river so that mankind can make their way back to holy God, not by anything we do, but all by the grace of a loving God. In this election, we have at stake before us something that's highly unusual that we haven't had before. Because I am a Republican, I don't know if any of you know that, but I am a Republican. And one thing that the opposition party understands very well is that elections are basically a math game. It's a math question, and it comes down to this. Which of the two candidates will have more votes at the end of the day? It's that even if you've gone through Common Core, you can probably even understand that. At the end of the day, one will prevail. Which will it be? And so if you noticed, on the Republican side, the candidate Donald Trump has been talking about some pretty hard-hitting issues like immigration. Are we actually going to still be a country and maintain our sovereignty and keep our people safe and free from people who do us harm coming across our border? He's been giving speeches about that, about American foreign policy. I'm a former federal tax litigation attorney. I'm just here to certify this is probably the most Reagan-esque tax plan that Donald Trump has come up with in recent times, and we need to build up our economy, and Donald Trump has a plan to do that. On every single level, if you look at the agenda that Donald Trump has put forward, it's been one that I, as a constitutional conservative, as a believer in Jesus Christ, can not only easily embrace, but readily embrace. In fact, people have said, oh, when you look at Donald Trump and you look at Hillary Clinton, there is, and I look at these parties, there isn't a dime's worth of difference between these candidates. I'm here to tell you there isn't a dime's worth of similarity between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And I served with Hillary Clinton. I was on the Intelligence Committee when the Benghazi tragedy came down, and I saw how Mrs. Clinton completely flunked her test as commander-in-chief. Just Benghazi alone is sufficient reason to reject her as the next president of the United States. Why? Because we had literally hundreds of requests for increased security. She slammed the door. When the Brits, the Canadians, the Red Cross were abandoning Benghazi, she kept our people there. And not only did she not fulfill the security requests, she pulled back security supports that we had in place. During the Benghazi attack, for the 13 hours when she should have been in the Situation Room for 13 hours, when we had a drone overhead watching the real-time battle unfold, she should have done what every other Secretary of State in American history did, and that's call in a military response to save people who are being massacred on the ground. She did not do that. She did not make that request. Flunk. Failure. You cannot be commander-in-chief and leave Americans on an active battlefield. And we know immediately she knew this was a terrorist attack, but yet she told the people that she really trusts, like her daughter, that this was a terrorist attack. But for the families of the dead, she told them a lie. That she persisted, that it was some fake, phony internet video, because, of course, under no circumstances can we ever insult Islam. That's Hillary Clinton. So you see, there is a compare and contrast like you can't believe. And if Hillary Clinton comes in as the President of the United States, her first act will be to ensure her re-election. And the way she will do that will be to grant unconstitutional, illegal amnesty for millions of people who are in the United States illegally, so that she can turn them into voters for her 4 years later. It isn't that we're anti-immigrant. I'm not. I married the son of an immigrant. Probably most of you in here have very strong immigrant connections. We're not against. We need immigrants. But you must follow the rule of law. That's fundamental. The greatest casualty on the battlefield of Barack Obama's administration has been the exaltation of lawlessness in the United States. That is Barack Obama's legacy. Think of that. Lawlessness in the United States. Does anyone for a moment for a moment think that Hillary Clinton will revert to upholding the law if she is president of the United States. It is not going to happen. Donald Trump will stand as a law and order president, and not only will he build up a veneration for the rule of law, he is committed to building up our economy with the greatest tax plan since Ronald Reagan. He is committed to building up our military, which I can tell you again as a member of the Intelligence Committee, it has been so devastated that there were times when I would leave our committee shaking in fear for our country. I couldn't believe the level of vulnerability. Do you realize that in our lifetime, we have been privileged to live in the greatest economic powerhouse that the world has ever known, the United States of America. We have been privileged to live in the greatest military powerhouse that the world has ever known, the United States of America. It didn't happen just because we were lucky people on this land. It happened because the people of this nation were not afraid to name a holy God as their God. And we had a critical mass of individuals who were not ashamed of the Old Testament or of the New Testament. And they lived their lives in accordance with that. Certainly not the entire nation. I'm not trying to say that. But decidedly, this was a nation that chose within our laws to honor God. That redounded to our benefit. And also in 1948, when the Jewish state of Israel announced its independence, it was the United States 11 minutes with a Democrat president, Harry Truman, that said to Israel and the whole world, "We will have your back." And we did. That has fostered a tremendous relationship between the United States and the Jewish state. And I believe one of the most dangerous events of the Obama administration was July of 2015, when it was the Obama administration that took the lead to advance the Iran agreement, which was the greatest fear that Israel had. Because you see, Iran is the chief state sponsor of terrorism in the world. And our president, for some inexplicable reason, we'd had sanctions in place for about 10 years. Iran was virtually on its knees. I was getting the briefings about what tough shape Iran was in. And our president, just exactly when we had Iran in a situation where we actually could put crimps on their nuclear program, did exactly the opposite. He rushed to enrich the Iranians. In fact, the story just came out in the last 24 to 48 hours that very likely the Obama administration has given in excess of $33 billion in cash and gold to the chief state sponsor of terrorism in the world, and that's according to the U.S. government. What are we choosing? Life or death? What are we choosing? When you put in excess of $33 billion in cash and gold in the hands of the chief state sponsor of terrorism in the world, who about every other day says death to the United States, death to Israel, what do you think they're going to do with that $33 billion? Their plan isn't to go and have an aid package to Israel, I think. Their plan is to continue not only to foster terrorism, but to buy on the black market the critical materials that they will need to get their nuclear program finalized, done. That's what they're doing. And they've been sending their little patrol boats like ants to come around our U.S. destroyers and ships in the Gulf. And any sane president would say, you do that, you're gone, and they'd be gone. That's what a sane president does. And that hasn't happened. As I started with my remarks, you see the decision is on our hands because we are the largest voting bloc in the United States. We can't say that the moral choice was to support neither candidate because you see, one will win. One will win. The book of Daniel says, the Most High God lifts up who he will and takes down who he will. Blessed be the name of the Lord. One thing we need to understand in all of this is that we do have this choice. And we have a choice again where I don't even think it's close. I'm not on the payroll of the Trump campaign. I'm here of my own volition because I am a mother to 5, a foster mother to 23, now a grandmother, greatest thing ever. But this is the other thing I get. We have been privileged to have a gift. Do we as believers recognize how privileged in the United States we are? You know, all these Hollywood people who say, if Donald Trump wins, I'm out of here. You're shortly going to hear from a Hollywood person who is awesome, John Voight. He'll be out here in just a minute. He's just the opposite. He's so fantastic. That's what Hollywood says. Well, it's easy for them to say that because, you see, they love socialism. They love centralized planners. They've got an entire world to choose from of socialist nations and central planners. What I ask you is this. Where do we go? Those of us who love constitutional republics. Last time I looked, I think we're it. Where are we supposed to go? So if Hillary wins, what's our lot? Well, I think we know what's going to happen in the Department of Justice, the Department of Injustice. We have never before seen the level of politicization of federal agencies as we have under Barack Obama. We saw an FBI director who actually stood up in front of the cameras and laid out a complete case as to why Hillary Clinton should be in jail wearing orange. And he didn't do it. And more evidence has come out since that is so blatant that she should be brought up by the FBI and recommended for felony charges and actually in time doing jail. We can't get justice now out of our FBI. We can't get justice out of the Department of Justice. I say to you churches, I say to you nonprofits, I say to you small business owners, what we have seen is a vindictiveness out of this White House like nothing we've ever seen before. Our Constitution guarantees equality before the law, that the rule of law prevails. That's not what's happened under this administration. We will see a heightened level, I believe, of vindication coming out of a Hillary Clinton White House, where I believe there will be prosecutions for churches, for nonprofits, for anyone that opposes the Hillary Clinton agenda. Open your eyes. You see, because we have been given this magnificent gift of liberty here in the United States, we have taken it for granted, thinking this is always the way it will be, and that this 7.5 years with Barack Obama is merely an aberration that can quickly be rectified. I'm here to tell you these aren't quickly rectified situations. When you have a president who doubles the debt in his tenure, that's not quickly rectified. When you enrich the chief state sponsor of terrorism with $150 billion for more terrorism and nuclear war, that's not quickly rectified. We got work to do. And what we need to understand is that we didn't just do this on our own. We stand on the shoulders of a great cloud of witnesses of previous generations who scrimped and saved and sacrificed the Pilgrims, the American Revolutionary War veterans, from every war going forward, our veterans whom we thank. We are given this magnificent gift because of what they gave to us, because of the businesses that our forefathers built up. We have been the beacon and blessing for the world. And don't think for a moment that that will be our lot going forward, because you see, history teaches us that when great nations fall in antiquity, they fall fast and they fall hard, and quite often they are no more. Don't think we are any different. We need to wake up. We need to grasp this opportunity that's in front of us. It is a magnificent opportunity, both as an homage to those who have come before, and thanks and appreciation for what they did for us. Even more importantly is our need to maintain the social and moral contract that we have with generations yet unborn, so that this shining city will forever stay on the hill. You can do that. That's what the church can do. That's what the faith-believing community can do. We can be that element that does the work that has to be done in the next 60 days. So there is a future, there is a hope, and there is a choice. God bless you. Thank you for letting me share this time with you this afternoon. I love you all.